identifying transferable skills. What are the things you're doing now, even though you did it for 20 years, that you could do in the other job? What are the common challenges that you felt your client are facing?
But what really have you done? And I started just asking questions right there in the class. Like, did you manage grants? Did you manage a budget? Well, how much? How many people were on this team, right? And then really understanding the value of that impact, of this thing that you were doing.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the IWillAim podcast. Our topic for today is career pivot in mindset. And our special guest is Dr. Kristy Taylor. Hey, Dr. Taylor, how are you doing today?
Hey, Will, how are you doing today? I'm so excited to be on your podcast. We've had an awesome opportunity to work together a couple times this year, so I'm happy, excited to meet your audience.
Same here. Looking forward to our conversation. How about let's start with a quick introduction?
Well, I am the owner and founder of Work Solutions, LLC. We are a career branding and diversity focused company. I am a certified career coach and executive coach. And I really focus on working with clients to cultivate a mindset that will allow us to pivot and build a strong career brand. And we work with companies to work with individuals to build those strong career brands, but we also work with organizations to not only offer courses and classes to help their audience and staff with career branding, but also a little bit of focus on diversity and workplace resiliency. And we do a lot of virtual events focused on helping people to cultivate and build those strong mindsets to become more resilient in the workplace.
What motivates you to start the company?
Well, okay, so we started Work Solutions. This is actually, I've been running my company for 10 years. We were under a different brand, Healthcare Consulting. And when I first launched my business, I was really focused on just being a career coach focused on the healthcare sector because my doctorate degree is in global health science. And so after I came back from a deployment in 2023, actually a year before that, I changed the name of the business to Work Solutions, and we spelled it WORXK. And we were still really focused on the healthcare sector and just, writing the prescription for career success. And I was like, you know what? After I came back from this deployment, I said, I can do this for everybody. I can help people who need it to write that prescription for career success. And in November of 2023, actually, I set out to start speaking and expanding our audience to really focus on being a prescription for career success. And when I first relaunched under the Work Solutions banner as this prescription for career success, I was really marketing myself as a career and a mindset coach, because my goal was not only to help people to build a strong career brand, but to also help people to cultivate a mindset to help them to get off that hamster wheel, whatever is holding them back from getting to that next level in their career.
First of all, you mentioned deployment, so I want to let my audience know that you serve in our country. So you're currently still serving. So thank you for your service. Second, I love the concept of prescription, right? Like you're helping people get better. You're helping people improve. And you mentioned that it's been 10 years, which is extremely impressive. What are the things that you found that people needed most help with over the course of the 10 years that you've been working on this?
So this is different. Where the company is now, Will, we've only been focused in this arena for the last 2 years, right? But it's all the same. Career coaching is so different. Like, you don't hear me say that I'm a life coach or anything like that, right? Career coaching is so different because when clients come in to you or connect with you, they're usually reaching out for some type of service related to a transactional, will you help me with my career brand, meaning my resume, my cover letter, all those things, right? But as a coach, it is about asking those deeper questions. So I kind of describe it as this. If someone comes in for a life coaching session, they usually come up with this broad set of topics and the coach helps them to narrow it down. Career coaching is different because they come in transaction based. And as a holistic career coach, I'm asking them questions because if you're saying to me, hey, I'm not getting promoted, or I don't feel like that I'm prepared for the next level, even if I did your resume, you can have the greatest resume, whatever. But if you don't have the mindset, right? If there are things that are holding you back, your thought processes, that's going to radiate in the interview, how you interact. It even impacts how you go about the job search process. So the thing that I am really encountering with clients is, them not really realizing their potential or even understanding the impact of mindset on your ability to progress in your career, right? Because I can say a million things. I can say get training. I can say keep a document tab on yourself, because those are all of the things that we need to do to be really trying to build a solid career, right? But even if you do all of this stuff without a proper mindset, without that cultivating that proper mindset, it's going to be hard for you to move because you are radiating those things that you're putting out in the universe, right?
You mentioned mindset a couple times. I want to talk about mindset. That it's important in your career. What are some of your strategies without giving away everything? What are some of your strategy to help your client improve their mindset?
One of the things that we have to do is, I think one of the things that really gets me about mindset coaching is that sometimes people overdo it as a coach, right? Telling people that everything's going to be gumdrops and rainbows. One of the things I tell people is to recognize your humanness, right? That you may be on this trajectory where things are feeling really positive, but you are going to have some days where even if it feels positive, it just might be some days. Maybe you had an interview and it didn't go well. Well, instead of, kind of getting back on that hamster wheel, look at what could I learn from the situation. So what I would say, one piece of advice is to give yourself some grace. Recognize your humanness and see what you can learn from situations, because like with every interview, you're going to get better, right? You're going to be able to tell your stories better. And so look at the things that you experience as opportunities to learn and opportunities for improvement. Give yourself that grace, because that'll help you to really manage your emotions, because we know that part of this process is emotional intelligence, right? And you building that resiliency through emotional intelligence. And part of that is recognizing your humanness and giving yourself grace. At this point in time, I'm here in the DMV area. We have thousands of people and across the United States who are losing their jobs. Their careers were either in the federal government or the private sector. And especially a lot of my clients who come to me now because of where I'm located here in the National Capital Region. A lot of them, they work for the federal government. It's like, well, Kristy, I don't know what I'm going to do next. Just because so much of what you were doing, if you spent 20, 30 years in a career, not really understanding how to make that pivot. But one thing that I tell them is give yourself some grace, right? As you go through and you're exploring and learning, identify your transferable skills and really take time to understand what it is that you want next, as well as the value that you bring to the table.
I love the concept of giving yourself some grace, because that's immensely important, especially when you go into challenging times, because you could be really hard on yourself when things are not moving in the right direction. And the other part that I really like about what you said is identify transferable skills. What are the things you're doing now, even though you did it for 20 years, that you could do in the other job? What are the common challenges that you felt your client are facing?
It's simply not knowing their value. I'll give you an example just from today. I was conducting a class. I do these workshops because I do work a full-time job, but on days that we have off, I try to conduct workshops and make those workshops accessible and affordable for folks to come to. And I was talking to one of the attendees, and we were kind of doing a review of the LinkedIn, right? And I know she's going after an executive role. And I said, okay, here's what your bio says, right? But what really have you done? And I started just asking questions right there in the class. Like, did you manage grants? Did you manage a budget? Well, how much? How many people were on this team, right? And then really understanding the value of that impact, of this thing that you were doing. Because sometimes people don't articulate that. And I know we live in an age of AI, right? And believe it or not, AI is a tool that has helped to enhance the experience of me as a resume writer and a coach, but it doesn't take away from the need for that personal interaction, that one-on-one, right? So my role as a coach is still important, because it was by asking those questions, getting that person to really think like, what has been my impact? And that allowed her to be able to, even just in that short series of questions, be able to articulate the value. Because I said, what I'm seeing here on your resume, it does not live up to what I know that you've done, right? And so when you're going after a senior executive role, one thing you want to make sure that you're doing is you're kind of giving that wow factor up front of what you're bringing into the table and how you're going to solve the problems. And I can't see that in your current, bio, the thing that we were reviewing, right? So just giving those updates. And she walked away from the class like, I have a few things to do. I have a few items. And so when we talk about transferable skills, sometimes people really think that just because I've done it in this sector, it doesn't mean that it applies to this sector. If you manage the budget, you manage the budget. If you led a team, you've led a team. Yeah. If you oversaw projects from end to end, then you've overseen projects, right? So you have to be confident in that and look at these job descriptions, look at what the problem, because the employer is advertising because they are seeking to solve a problem. They need someone who can come into their organization and solve a problem, whether you're a cashier or a senior executive, right? They're looking for you to solve a problem. So you just need to be able to articulate your value and what you've done. And a lot of people don't know how to do that because maybe you have been off the job market for a number of years. You haven't had to update your resume, or you're just ready for a new start, a new transition. You don't know where to go next. So just think about those skills and just understand there are some skills that are marketable across different sectors.
I think that the one question that you ask is how much budget have you managed? And often I wonder, certain things we probably do, we don't focus our attention on, right? It's like we're short selling ourselves because we assumed it already. We assume when people read our bio, they could read between the lines that says we manage a budget, we manage this many people. But I love the fact that by asking them those questions, you're helping them think through like, wow, I'm missing those. Those are things I'm missing on my bio. So it's really powerful as a career coach to help them actually see what they don't see.
Yeah. I'll give an example. I'm just going to use some arbitrary numbers, right? So one of the questions I asked, well, did you manage grants? And it was like, well, I managed this grant. It was $2 million or $3 million, right? And I had this grant that was $6 million. I said, okay, so you managed $2.6 million in grants. Doesn't that sound more powerful than just saying I managed grants? Oversaw $2.6 million, oversaw a capital budget of $1.9 million, right? And that means that you were involved in the planning process of building and expanding the organization if you were managing that capital budget. So paying attention to things like that we just often overlook because we assume that, I work in this space, they're going to know what it means. I always say that a good impression when you're in an interview and you are in there articulating what it is that you're going to bring to the table, how you're going to solve that employer's problem, is when if there's a panel interview and let's say they're going to ask you 10 questions, right? By the time you get to question number 6 and they're like, well, you've already answered my question. That means you've already articulated most of what they needed, right? And so at that point, it's kind of just expanding and really opening up and kind of showcasing even more of your skill set.
I think that's an excellent point, right? When you shared enough information and it gives you a sense of also comfort that question number 6, they would say that you answered the question already and you now have an opportunity to expand, to expand on that thought and be able to add more evidence to what's already would be a solid foundation, right? I think that's also a skill that probably not a lot of people know and they have to learn.
We ran a workshop called Pace Yourself. It's an interview prep workshop. Long before I was doing this, I wrote a book in 2019 when I was still focused on the healthcare sector, Ace the Medical Interview and Prevent a Code Blue, right? And that book actually has gotten so many opportunities for me and has carried me through. And now I still teach all of my clients the PACE method for interview. And it's the art of being able to tell a story. So when I'm saying you're sharing this information, those answers to those initial questions were still somewhere between 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Right. I tell clients don't go over 2 minutes and 30 seconds in general. Right. You don't want to articulate too long, but they were still able to tell an impactful story in the way that they answered those questions and articulate their value, how they're going to solve a problem. And it was still impressive enough that by the time they got to question 5 or 6, this is when you start hearing people say, well, you already answered my question, but I want to ask you this, so you have now an opportunity to expand. And that's the power of storytelling. And it goes back to mindset, Will, because just even as something as prepping those stories that you're going to tell when you go into that interview, it's going to make you more confident. You're going to come off as more polished, right? And when you're going into the interview, you're like, well, that doesn't come across as confident, polished, or somebody who is prepared. And I was making jokes about the last time I went into an interview, which is for the job I have now. And I usually come in there with my notebook and I really just sat in the car because I've done this enough times. Just sat in the car, right, with my piece of paper. I tore a piece of paper with my notebook and I said, here's the job description. Boom, 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 boom. This is what they're asking for because if we know that those first few things on that job description, that's really where the basic problem is, right? And I said, this is what they need. This is how I'm going to solve. This is what I've done. And if they hire me, this all of a sudden, I remember I went into that interview with just this little piece of paper in my folder. And I pulled it out and I said, well, you need this, this, and this. Let me tell you what I've done. Boom, boom, boom. And then I also, gave them an expanded copy of my resume. So it's like being able, and I was confident when I went in there, right? Because I've done this enough times and I've been able to share enough of myself where it's like, okay. And plus, the work that I've done is all across the internet. I mean, we've worked together, we've done events. So there's social proof of the work that I've done to have that impact. So that's what I kind of tell people, aware of, even is in this climate that we're living in, be aware of your social presence, your social media presence. You want your brand to be consistent. I don't care what's going on. For the last 2 years, you've been able to Google me, especially because as we work on our SEO, I'm a career and executive coach or career and mindset coach. And that has been the consistency across my branding. We do events. That has been consistent. So think about you. If you're listening to this, think about you are in the business of you. So when I talk to people about writing the prescription for career success, I always say, one, define success for yourself. Understand that, right? But learn from other people, learn from coaches, learn from more experienced people, and also work on polishing your brand, have a consistent brand, and that includes, even on LinkedIn, being aware of what you share. Because if I'm looking for an emotionally intelligent leader, and then I go to LinkedIn, and you've spilled all of your emotions all over the LinkedIn page because you're upset, I'm going to probably move on, right? And so sometimes we can have ourselves removed from a process simply by what we're posting and engaged on social media. So just be aware of all of that stuff, right? Because there's branding because you're in the business of you. Then there's the mindset piece, but both of those tie in together. Because again, that spillage that you had on the LinkedIn, sharing all of your emotions about, you're upset about something, that goes back to mindset too, because you were sharing something that was in your mind, right? And you allowed it to spill out on paper, but some of that could hurt your career and your personal brand.
Excellent point on personal branding. What are the ways for us to improve and be aware of our personal brand?
Yeah, so, it's those little things. And I was talking about that this morning, right? First of all, be aware of your social media presence. Like I just pointed out, LinkedIn is a great place. It's a great place to build a professional brand, but also don't forget things like the TikTok and Facebook. Pay attention to what you're posting, what you're doing, right? Even as something as the headers on your resume and cover letter, that's attention to detail. So when I do a resume and a cover letter for a client, I make sure the headers, the spacing, everything is consistent because that's their brand. Well, if we use, and we rarely will use some type of color schematics on a resume. I might put a dark blue or something like that. Resume doesn't need to be hot pink purple with stickers all over it, right? But we always choose a color on LinkedIn where, like I have clients now, we're going to be doing their LinkedIn. We're doing branding across the board, everything from LinkedIn to personal portfolio. Everything is consistent. You see it even in how we brand our business itself. So just pay attention, because what is it that you want people to know about you and your expertise, right? And LinkedIn is a great place to be able to share that. I think it's pretty obvious. I want people to know that I'm a career coach. I think it's pretty, and so part of that too, as a career coach, is making sure that that I am a member of professional organizations like the National Career Development Association, for me, which is particularly important, Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches, because that's where I get all of I get the latest updates. I'm always following trends, looking at things in the job market, really trying to pay attention, right? So being educated about what is happening in today's job market, being prepared to answer questions about what's happening. And so think about that in the context of your own expertise. You are in the business of you. And if I want to be a rocket scientist, then I need to know everything about being a rocket scientist. And you reading articles, sharing tips. It could even be something as like reading a research article and sharing that on LinkedIn and asking people what they think, or just sharing that latest news, right? But that's all a part of your brand. Because if I am looking to hire someone and then I'm looking at your LinkedIn and your job history, because remember, LinkedIn kind of acts, and I'm saying all of this because I just came from teaching a LinkedIn class today, right? But LinkedIn is kind of like that validator. It's like that personal, if old school back in the day, like building a web page, right? That's what LinkedIn is for us. It kind of, because you're friends with people that you work with, your work history there. So it kind of validate. So it is the place to showcase your expertise. So be careful with your career brand. Take it seriously. Be consistent about everything from your cover letter, your resume, to your LinkedIn. That's the triad right there, right? Then your social media and how you share information and what do you want to come across as. And then also be consistent in your storytelling. When you go into an interview, you need to make sure that the stories that you tell line up with what's on the resume. what's on LinkedIn. Everything is consistent in branding. Okay.
It's really interesting that branding goes as far as specific as the font and the color on your resume, right? The cover letter to your image on all platforms, as you mentioned, and people so often they're not aware of it. They think it's the resume and what they help people when they show up. It's like you said, it's almost a 360 view. So they need to be aware of it. It's important. As you look into 2026, how do you see the career coaching change in the next year?
Well, again, we initially, I will tell you that we're both kind of into AI. You're way into it more than I, right? But I remember when we in 2023 when we were first using AI, it was really transforming the business. And one of my concerns was, like, okay, how is it going to impact me when it comes to resume writing? Do you know that it really hasn't changed at all? I leverage AI as a tool. So I think that more and more and more, it will be a tool because people still need that one-on-one interaction and coaching, right? And so I don't just go to clients and say, even as a coach, I use it to write a resume, but I can't use it to edit a resume. I can tell you that because in order to get that resume where it needs to be with that client, I still have to I have a resume that I've been working on all week, working with a client, right? And this client, this was a person who was in business. Now she's like, I'm ready to transition to this while still running my business. And I'm like, man, I got to get this right because she said so many awesome things. I think it took me like 3 or 4 tries of until I said, okay, this is it. And she looked at, she said, hey, we ain't even got to meet for the edit because I really like what you did. But it took a while as a coach. And I know that. So when I look at 2026, I'm saying that there's going to be more with AI, but we have to understand how to leverage that from a business perspective as a tool. And then from a client perspective, using that as a tool to help and support you get to the next level. So get some skills in AI. Don't rely totally on AI because it doesn't take place of the human interaction. As the job market becomes even more difficult, we're going to have to talk about the art of the pivot. And that's what holistically we talked about today, right? Leveraging your transfer skills, that understanding your mindset, understanding the difference between you didn't get laid off from some type of behavioral issue. And even if you did take responsibility for it and move forward, most of the time you got laid off because the company was downsizing, something changed. That had nothing to do with you. That's just a part of business, right? And so don't say I was fired, I'm no good. You were laid off. It happens every day, thousands of people. So I don't want you I get it. It can be overwhelming. Believe me, I've been there. I've had to change jobs. This is my 3rd time this year, right? But think about this job market. I've been able to transition jobs. And I just was looking at a young lady's page who she found an intermittent job. Then she changed jobs until she landed back where she wanted to go. So keep an open mind about where your career is going to take you. Learn the art of the pivot. Learn to leverage your skills. Learn to use tools. Get help from coaches. Read articles. Stay abreast of what's happening. And keep fine-tuning your skills. Also be open to new skills, right? Look at everything that you can bring to the table and say, where can I pivot? When I first lost my job earlier this year, I'm telling you, Will, I had to go back into the vault and pull out. I think I had about 2 days to kind of feel like so sad because the bills were still due, right? And I was like, what skill do I have that I can fall back on? I had a teaching license from like 15, 18 years ago. And I was like, maybe I can reactivate this teaching license, right? When was able to reactivate that teaching license within 3 weeks, I was able to get a license to teach here in DC. So it's like looking at those things that we can fall back on, right? So now, no matter what happens with this job market, it's like, wait a minute, I'm certified to teach in Texas. I'm certified to teach in DC in both elementary and special education. But those were not things I was thinking about at the beginning of the year. But just having that skill set allowed me to be able to pivot. So I do have something to fall back on if something else were to happen. So I want your listeners to think like that. I got a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and also making sure that you're saving your money as well, and investing wisely.
Well, thank you for sharing the career pivot and how people do the pivot. And I also want to add on the point about AI. It's human plus AI.
Yeah.
We use the tool, but we ultimately make decisions. So I love fact that you mentioned you use it as a tool and you actually make decision. And at the end of the day, we still need human interactions and support from one another. For my audience today, listening to you and learning a lot from you, if they want to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach out to Dr. Taylor?
Well, you can find me very easily on LinkedIn, Dr. Kristy Taylor. Like I said, that optimized LinkedIn profile works well, right? But our website and across all our social medias, we are worksolutions.com. And across all social media, we are Work Solutions LLC. And you can easily find me on Instagram as well, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Really appreciate your time today. Have a good day.
Thank you, Will.